you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Resnick. I have the privilege of being volunteer chair of the Shady Grove Sector Plan Implementation Advisory Committee. I've been in this role for a year or so, and many of my committee colleagues are on with me this meeting, along with Nkosi Yearwood of Montgomery Planning, who we have to thank very sincerely for his ongoing support and expertise of this public committee. So Nkosi, thank you very, very much for your time and your expertise. We have one more meeting this year in December, and the agenda for that meeting has yet to be set. But just to say straight out, if anyone would like to be added to my email list, or for that matter, certainly Nkosi's email list, to learn about future meetings and other happenings with the committee, I will put my email address in the chat, and feel free to contact me. I have shared my screen. Our agenda this evening, we're going to be welcoming David Dice of Montgomery County's General Services Division. He's a director of that division, who will be offering us an update on the, as I've said very publicly and in writing, the much appreciated work of his team to relocate the MCPS bus depot from Crabs Branch Way per the Shady Grove Sector Plan. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the library at Shady Grove Station West Side. And on that particular subject, I'll defer to Nkosi. We'll talk about a couple of development updates, again, with deference to Nkosi, because he's in the know, obviously, at Montgomery Planning. We'll move on to any other topics that anyone wishes to discuss. And then, as I mentioned, our next meeting will be on December 6th. So why don't we jump right in? And David Dice, welcome. Again, thank you very much for your time this evening, certainly for your public service from one public servant to another, as Carol Kosary just mentioned. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to you and appreciate what you could share with us.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you very much. And if you'll stop sharing, because I'm going to share a couple of things with you all. Let me first begin with an update on the MCPS, existing MCPS depot. I am on your email list, so I'm privy to a lot of the email exchanges back and forth, and I'll be quite honest with you, I've shared your frustration. And Michael Lewis with MCPS, he's the Director of Transportation. I asked him to be able to come here tonight. He is attending a conference and says he is therefore unable to participate in this, but I told him what I was going to tell you, so none of this is out of school. I asked him what the status was of, I don't really want to call it beautification, but I think the improvement of the curb appeal and landscaping along Crabs Branch of the existing depot. And what he responded back to me is that his facilities team, and I'm going to read this so I get it right, is still working to determine what is feasible, and they're trying to balance any appearance of permanency and what our neighbors' wishes are. Candidly, I responded to him. I said, the neighbors' wishes are to make this look nicer than it does right now. I suggested that perhaps some action was better than continuing to examine what's feasible. Considering that even under the best circumstances, a new depot is 10 years away, I don't think that anyone need be concerned about permanence of any landscaping. I suggested, and I have not, in his defense, I have not heard back from Michael, but I said, surely MCPS has got landscape architecture firms on staff or under contract, and it would be nice to come up with a detailed and discernible landscape plan that maybe even could be presented to this group, and most certainly to the our neighbors on the west side, and let's get going with something. So I'm going to follow up with MCPS on that. I think it's high time that something gets done. It's really past time that something gets done as far as landscape and visual curb appeal and appearance along there. So I'm going to volunteer my services to try and prod that along and see what we can do about expediting this. The fall is a great time to do planting, and so that we can see it in the spring, even if there's an overabundance of Bradford pears that blossom early in the spring and are otherwise a nondescript green tree in the rest of the summer. I still think something would be nice to boulevard Crab's Branch on that east side. So that's the update on the existing depot. I had not followed up on the cars, so I don't want to speak to that. As to it was my understanding that most, if not all, of the cars that the schools use for shop repairs and all have been removed. But oops, 7 cars are left to be removed. Thank you, Shapana. Knew that you'd be on top of it. So I'll follow up again with Michael to make sure that that gets done. There's really no reason that that they should still be there. I think it's a good program that they do, but again, we're concerned about what the neighbors see, and we should always be concerned about what the neighbors see. So that's an update on the existing depot. I'll pause if anyone's got any questions about that particular issue. That's enough of a pause. Okay, let's talk about the relocation of the depot. So most of you have been along with us in the storied past of this effort. We have looked everywhere. We had, as I said to you before, our eyes on a couple of sites that we thought would be very, very promising. Negotiations on the purchase of those sites, even the preliminary negotiations, were less than successful, particularly since the owners of those properties were estimating costs and sale costs in the neighborhood of $30 million. And frankly, that's a tough pill to swallow. We still have a geographic restriction, but frankly, I didn't feel, in all good conscience, that spending $30 million just to purchase dirt, after which we'd spend another untold millions of dollars to build a depot, was in the public's best interest. So here's my thinking, and I presented this to County Executive Elrich, and he's supported this, and we have begun efforts in this direction. Since we already happen to own 45 acres in the middle of the area already, our focus has been on the redevelopment of the east side, understanding that the master plan still requires mixed residential, elementary school, open space, and some commercial. But a development occurred in the last few months that was particularly interesting. We were approached by WMATA about taking over that loop road that comes off of the intercounty connector and goes up to the metro station. They no longer want to maintain that, and they want to cease the use of that. And they asked if the county was interested in it. And that got us thinking that those of you who've used that loop road are familiar with how its elevation is significantly lower than the elevation of the east side of the Crabs Branch property where the bus depot is. And we know that there's a significant slope that goes down from that side. So we have put our efforts towards, and I'm going to use the term undergrounding the depot. I've run across a few incidences across the country where this strategy has been very successfully implemented. So our approach has been, and we've performed some test fits along this line, to put the depot, excuse me, on the east side of the property, but underground it with the residential and commercial and office building on the surface level. And to help illustrate this, I'm going to try and share a couple of screens. So bear with me. Well, I should go out on the street and find a 12-year-old who could probably do this for me better. Here we go. Let's see if this is, yeah. So can everyone see this?
Yeah.
All right. So this is Crabs Branch Way right here. This is the east side that we're talking about. And what we'd be looking at is taking the eastern edge of that property, and this is where the slopes slope down somewhat significantly. And we could literally dig out this east side of the property, and build underground garages and some maintenance structures with some above ground office building space that obviously can be attractive. And the ingress and egress in and out of this would be exclusively on this loop road. So no buses would be on Crafts Branch Way except those that have business to be there, running routes, picking up kids and things like that. And this would give them immediate access out to the intercounty connector or Shady Grove Road or all the places where they need to go, but have no impact on the community immediately adjacent to the facility. So let me move from there and bring up yet another. Again, we've just started doing some test fits, some of the preliminary test fits. Frankly, I had a consultant that I didn't think got it, but we're proceeding with the second test fits that are really showing some promise. Now you should be able to see, this is a profile of the site. Can everyone see this? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So where my cursor is now, this higher elevation, this is Crabs Branch Way. So we would have residential along Crabs Branch, some of the open space here, and this is just one of the slices in the property. There's a few of them with more residential. And this orange that you see here would be the underground garage, if you will, space for the buses, and probably have some offices. There are offices associated with that level, but an office building can be made very architecturally appealing. And this is on the towards the southern end of the site. And you can see that there's a good measurable topo change between the Crabs Branch and the Loop Road. And then elsewhere in the site, there'd be the high-rise residential, otherwise regular residential, and again, more undergrounding of the bus. And in some of those areas, we can add residential on top of the bus garage. There's a number of places where this strategy has been successfully employed. I meant to come up with some examples and pictures, but frankly, I just ran out of time this afternoon. But I can come up with them and send them to Jeff, and Jeff can distribute them. There are very interesting places where this has been done. We have not pursued this in the past, lest you be thinking, well, this seems smart. Why didn't you look at this 5 years ago? Because we were concerned about the cost, and it is expensive to do this. But frankly, when I'm looking at the price of land to purchase, it just becomes excessive, and we can do it less expensive on site. The strategy would be to get with institute a public-private partnership with the developer on the east side, who's also has experience in these things, and that they are out there, and I think this would go a long way to meeting both needs with a fairly elegant solution. My intent, as I've instructed my staff and our consultants, is I don't want the residents to see a single bus. This is the mandate. And I think we're moving aggressively in a right direction, and we've focused all of our efforts there. And when I talked to Mark a couple of weeks ago and told him that I was meeting with you all, I said, "Are you prepared for me to unveil this?" He says, "Yeah, I want to get feedback, see what the community thinks about this." But I think this is a good strategy. I'm very positive about it. It will not be inexpensive, but nothing we're going to do about a bus depot is going to be inexpensive. So that's where I'm at. That's a summary. I'll stop talking and answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, David. That's really very helpful, and as were your comments about the current depot. So, first and foremost, thank you very much for your voice and your expertise and your advocacy on behalf of our community to MCPS. I'd be remiss if I did not thank also Aaron Kraut, who's on our call here, Chief of Staff of Councilmember Lutke's office. Aaron, thank you also for your advocacy and your support, and certainly also your public service. David, with regard to the plans that you've described, they sound very interesting and quite exciting. I'm going to just go to our chat here, and I'll call on folks as I see.
I think Ted had his hand up first.
Yes, Ted, go ahead. Ted Willard,
Yes.
please.
Yep. Thank you, David. So what I'm kind of curious about as a beginning piece from this is that the Metro Access Road between Shady Grove Road and Crabs Ranch Way is currently essentially a divided highway. And I think it certainly, at different times of day, becomes a fairly busy with traffic to the metro station coming from 370, from 270, that, all of that aspects. To what extent, as you've been initially thinking about this, and obviously no plans have been made about this, but it seems to me you're going to have traffic come out of that bus depot to go both directions from there. Is that accurate? And what are you sort of envisioning, at least as a first sketch, in terms of that?
Well, that is accurate, and you're welcome to have a job on my staff any day, because that was the first question I asked. Was how I think it's intriguing that we can have possession of that loop road, but how are we going to use it? Obviously, there's going to be some engineering that needs to be done to do that. We'll probably might even, and in all likelihood, have to institute some controls along that intersection during peak activity times to allow buses to exit. I don't think ingress will be an issue, but let me just give you a vague answer in saying that is an issue that we're very much aware of and still needs to be studied.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Carol, please go ahead.
Yeah. I thank you, David, for really, trying to dig deep and think this. But we are not talking about one bus depot. We're talking about two.
That's correct.
We're talking about in excess of 450 buses.
Yep.
And that's quite an underground facility.
Can I speak to that? I don't mean to cut you off. Forgive me.
Oh, no, we can talk back and forth.
This is not. I should have mentioned this earlier. This is not an absence of the need for MCPS to start parking buses off-site at schools.
Right.
And they are thankfully now much more favorable to that idea, particularly with electric buses, than they once were. So they are now making plans in concert with the ultimate decommissioning of this depot to move a number of buses. I don't know what that number is. We still have to work with them. As I told you last time, they had a study of high school students that were looking at this. The results of that study is the high school students said, yeah, sure, you could do it. So we've got the endorsement of MCPS high school seniors to pursue this. So we will, and no solution on any site. There's no site on the county except possibly the fairgrounds, but those are used for other things, where I could park 500 buses. So it's just not going to happen. So every solution that we employ has to include some off-site parking. And again, the evolutionary process of this project has been that with the advent of new technologies and buses, that we think we can do that.
Right. I just want to, and I mean, I've been harping on this for the past couple of years, to remind everybody that the Board of Education is sitting on an almost 5-acre parking lot on 355 next to Montgomery College and Carver Center that is empty. And my husband, who is sitting here, will attest to the fact that every time we drive by it, he's laughing. I have a fit. And I still think that this parking lot should be, I mean, and it was studied as a potential site for parking some of these buses, and it's the freaking city of Rockville, and and I know, the issues you've had with Rockville, the city of Rockville on other developments. the itty bitty little community next to this facility had fits about the study about parking some of the buses there in the past because of all the diesel fumes. But I mean, my God, it's almost 2024. These are electric buses. And why isn't the Montgomery County Public Schools stepping up with this BOE owned piece of property, which is a parking lot that is not being used as a site for putting, you could probably put 150, 200 of the buses there, especially if you did structured parking. I mean, and it's great that your office is taking the lead on this, but this is public schools. I mean, they should be part of this conversation. They should be stepping up and taking ownership of this also. And they have 5 acres sitting there on Rockville Pike that is basically not being used.
Well, that's an excellent observation, one that we've had from the beginning, but you're absolutely right. The neighboring community reacted strongly and negatively to this when we were talking diesel buses.
But
electric buses changes the
right.
Right, electric buses changes that equation significantly, and we have looked at that. But at this point, we're not actively considering that as part of the solution because of the lack of response we've gotten from schools. We can actually we can address the parking requirements for the school bus depot by having the buses parked at the depot and letting the other half of the buses park at high school and middle schools. That will address the issue for this particular location. But yes, that parcel still remains unused.
Right. I mean, so we're all in agreement that this parcel remains unused. And we give public school MCPS $3 billion a year, and they answer to nobody, is what you're telling us.
Well, I'm going to defer an opinion on that statement, but you're right that the parcel is not being used very actively.
So if I die of a stroke, I mean,
Carol, Carol, I'd like to just interject for a moment, and then is it Payman, Bibi?
Yes, Jeff.
I see your hand. Carol, I think we would do well. I'll put this right out there to invite Seth Adams to come and talk with us at our next meeting to hear what his thoughts are about this. And I know he indicated that he perhaps could come to this meeting, but David's our guest speaker. But maybe we'll reach out to Seth and invite him in December. It'll be our Christmas gift to him.
It will be, because I mean, it's past the point where they need to be accountable.
Yeah. I hear you. I agree with you. Payman, Habibi, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, David,
Yes, sir.
for your presentation as well. So now, a lot of us bought a property on the west side because we did an online search and we found your approved plan. So for myself, that was one of the main reasons I bought a property here. I've been attending this meeting for months now, and the issue was that when the bus depot is going to be relocated. But now that you mentioned this new plan, I'm having a hard time to imagine what a good benefit it will bring to our community. The way you mentioned it with the underground, bus depot, and what's going to go on top of it. Then considering you either need to build a tunnel, to go over the highway or the road, or you will need a bridge, either of those. So I'm just trying to understand what benefits this new plan will bring to our community. And
that's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. Our commitment is that the folks on the west side are going to reap the benefits that you anticipated when you purchased property there, when you expected to see residential, open space, and development of school across the street. And that's what you will see. I don't want you to see a single bus. The only buses I want you to see are the ones that are stopping to pick up and drop off your children. The access to the loop road will be at grade. You don't see the loop road from where you live now. You won't see it then, and everything will be out of sight, out of a line of sight for the West Side residences for sure. And we also want to ensure a nice viewscape for the future residences of the East Side. We want to honor the focus of the master plan and vision for the East Side, but we're pretty confident that we can do both now, and we plan to again exercise the benefits of the of a public-private partnership. We're also already investigating infrastructure funds available from the Biden administration under that bill, where I'm told there are untold billions of dollars for us to access, and we're already targeting grant funding to help us afford all of this. But again, to your concern, Payman, I'm confident, and I have made it very clear to staff and consultants looking at this that I don't want anybody seeing anything that looks like a depot.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Payman. Other questions for David? Please.
Thank you. I have a quick question. Thank you so much, David, for your time and for the great information you've presented. If this were to be approved and everything were to work out for this type of proposal, what's the estimated time frame that you're looking at this point?
Well, good question. We're pursuing this now with the funding that we have available for consulting services. And a lot of it depends upon the availability of federal grants. Oftentimes, the grants that we access, and we're confident that we'll qualify for a good number of grant funding, dictate the terms. So it's hard for me to answer that. I've told you guys for many years now that it would probably be a 10-year time frame. It could be less. I really don't know. And before everyone starts pouncing on Councilmember Ludke and her office and my friend Aaron, I have not yet briefed the council member on this. These were developments that have just recently come about. So please don't ask Councilmember Ludke for any details or press her for any statements at this time. And Aaron, I'm going to follow up with a conversation with you to get on the council member schedule. So this is what you're hearing is pretty fresh off the presses. As I said, we've had some consultants looking at it, but I don't tend to go. This is actually more public than I would normally go with something like this, but recognizing y'all's long forbearance on this issue, I felt like you needed something more concrete than vacuous statements from me. So we will put some more flesh on these bones over the coming weeks and months. And I don't know if December's too early, but certainly early next year, we'll probably have something more concrete to share.
Quick follow-up. What's the estimated budget for a project like this? I mean,
what would it cost? I was
no.
hoping to go all night without getting that question asked.
Sorry. You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Well, I'm hesitant to answer. Every time our Office of Management and Budget always asks me for estimates of projects early in the process, and then they hold me to the number that I guess. I try to avoid those things. Let me just say it's going to be over $100 million and could be more, but it's not going to be cheap, but it wouldn't be cheap no matter where we did it. So I'm gonna defer if I can on that until perhaps maybe the next time we meet and I've got something more definitive in front of me to stand on.
No, that's wonderful. I just had no idea, so I appreciate the information. And again, thank you very much.
Sure, sure.
Before we go to Ted, David, can I just ask you, you referenced the MCPS study by several high school students, which,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly, emanated from one of the Board of Education
That's
members,
correct.
perhaps Lynn Harris. Would you perhaps recommend that we do ask Seth to kind of report out on that and offer us kind of a perspective on where schools stand on their relocation?
I'm not going to speak for Seth. He can
No.
tell you whether he's willing to comment on that or not. I think the bottom line is that there was nothing in their report out that deterred, and I felt like personally and professionally, it added impetus to a recommendation that we've had on this subject for years.
Right.
But this is probably a question I would defer and suggest you ask Seth.
Certainly. Very good. We will. Thank you. Ted Willard, back to you. Please, go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to kind of get a little bit of an understanding of the number that you kind of relayed in there, David, because my assumption is, and you tell me if I'm wrong about this, since you talked about balking at a $30 million property, you're purchasing a property that was listed as $30 million. And then you just talked about $100 million that I'm guessing the actual cost to build a facility even on a flat ground, if you had a piece of land, would be in the neighborhood of $70 million. Is that what you're basically telling me? That if we don't want to go forward with purchasing a $30 million piece, I would assume that the structure, the idea of doing it as a structure underground is in theory less than $30 million.
It's less, but not as severely less as you're hinting at. It's we would probably do a structure no matter where we do this, only for efficiency of the space. But you also have to appreciate that in addition to the cost, the process of acquiring land adds another 5 years to any process. Whenever I go to acquire land, it's not just a walking up and saying, here's your estimate, here's my estimate, we agree, here's a check. That process and the negotiations that follow take a long time. I don't, so it's hard for me to say exactly what if there was a property that I could get a hold of, and let me make sure I'm clear, there was no properties that were listed for sale. These were us approaching people who had no intention of selling and trying to entice them to consider that. So that would be a very difficult process to go through, and again, any purchase of land takes away from money I could otherwise spend on an enhanced development of a project on property we already own.
No, that makes reasonable sense. I assumed that there was logic to it. I didn't know what that logic was,
yes.
And was hoping you would share.
Well, part of this,
process.
honestly, is we want to move this project along, and I think again the solution that I'm putting before you is a pretty elegant solution. Again, it helps that we've seen this successfully done elsewhere. It's not a difficult thing to do. You all are aware, maybe even not aware, of countless developments in and around the Washington, D.C. area that have buildings on top of podiums underneath them. And this is exactly this is nothing more than a building on top of a parking garage, basically. And those happen everywhere.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ted. Joe Perillo, please go ahead. Hey, Joe.
Good evening. I have a question here. This was on a table about 6-7 years ago. It's on East Goody Drive, across the street from Jack Irwin Stone. There is the old site where they had a dump site, which now is all covered up. If I can share my, yeah,
Hey, Joe, I'm
exactly.
I'm gonna interrupt you just to be helpful. I was gonna ask the exact same question, and I just put up a
Exactly.
map
Bingo. Exactly. Thank you so much.
right there.
You know, back in the day, we were looking at this, and the people that were opposed was Durwood Station because they were afraid of having all the diesel fumes from the school buses back in the day. But now we're into the electric vehicles, and we won't have the startups or anything like that that you would have back in the day. And basically they're mitigating the area right now. I mean, they're basically off gassing the I guess it's, I don't know, a 60 to 7 year old dump site, but it'd be great just to pave it and actually have a depot there. It's
Mhm.
in it's in an industrial area anyways. You got Goody Drive, it's right there, it's so close. And if there's an issue with the Durwood Station area, just put up a large berm that they'll never see it.
This is a site that one of the first sites that I looked at, gosh, 12 years ago or so. And the issues associated with this site are extremely complicated. It's being mitigated now because it's an EPA site. EPA cited the violations of the early landfill. It was an unlined landfill, and there are just a tremendous number of problems. I actually looked at parking buses on top of it,
That's what I'm saying.
but the engineering challenges with doing so were daunting. I
Well,
advocate
you
I
talk about,
advocated
a building over
No,
over a parking garage. It's it's
it's actually not
you're
that hard. I would argue, having done these
okay.
sorts of things, I would argue that building a building over a parking garage is considerably easier than building a building over an old landfill.
Well, they
The
did that across the street. There's just south of that area there. I remember that they were actually they built the warehouses that are right there. I guess it's
light industrial use,
a
yeah,
light industrial area.
yeah.
They actually
These
did that, and it was there's a huge building there.
Yeah, it's a different type of construction. We all I can say is we did look at this and ruled it out because of all of the long-term challenges associated with it, and that mitigation is going to be ongoing for some years. I have a piece of property right adjacent to it, and where used to be a homeless shelter. It's now we've repurposed that for a couple of other uses. So we're pretty familiar with the site, and I just think that there would be an awful lot of challenges, long term and environmental, associated with that um, are too many unknowns associated with that to make it viable.
yeah.
Thank
I
you.
have my, I
Go ahead,
have
Carol.
my hand, I have my hand raised just to back up David. I've looked at this site. It's an ancient landfill. It's like you said, it's unlined. It should be like a super fun site. No, you don't want to park buses on it. Uh, you want to mitigate it the way that you're mitigating it, basically off gas it and turn it into a meadow or something. Um, it's an extremely damaged site. You don't want to damage it any more than it is.
Wouldn't you want to just encapsulate it then? That's what you're doing.
You can't encapsulate it.
But you actually off gas it with piping.
It's online. It's ancient. They just
They've
dump
actually
stuff
been
there.
just go Joe's point. They've actually been the county has been off gassing that site for a number of years.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of challenges with runoff, and it's got a
Don't
lot
you
of
have that
challenges.
now? Don't you have runoff? Don't you have deer and fowl and all kinds of animals going through that anyways?
Yeah, oh, sure you do, but I would not be able to put when we looked at that originally to put a large paved parking area on that and a site that's continually settling and would continue to settle for another few decades, it would just be um, I'd be redoing that parking lot annually. It's trust me, we looked at the structural and environmental impacts of building something on there, and they're just too unpredictable for long-term use. Fine for parks, you know, fine for things like that, but not for major heavy structures.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
it's a it's a damaged site. Um, we need to treat it gently.
I want to thank you, Carol and Joe. Thank you very much. Great minds, Joe. Think alike.
Thank you.
And Lisa, go ahead.
Yep, you got
Please.
that right.
Please go ahead.
I'm just curious for the proposed kind of like stacked parking lot and then residential on top, if, I guess, kind of a two-pronged question. If that configuration limits like what kinds of buildings you can put on top, and I guess if there's examples in the menu that you've mentioned that exist of this kind of arrangement, what kinds of, I guess, have there been residential, and I guess what
Sure,
kinds of
there
things have been
sure
done?
has been. There's been residential as well as commercial office space. And residential is actually pretty easy to do and because it's fairly lightweight. The commercial is a bit more challenging, but that's just addressed by the pilings and support structures underneath. If you ever get down to Bethesda, the county has a massive parking structure there down in the heart of Bethesda with very tall office buildings. It's just a matter where you locate the support pilings. I am about ready to finish construction on a recreation and aquatic center in the middle of Silver Spring with a large residential tower right next to it, the Leggett, and that's got underground parking. So I've got a pool and a residential tower with underground parking underneath. It's all, I don't mean to make it sound too simplistic, but it's just engineering.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. With respect of time and our agenda, I'd like to just ask if there are any other questions for David. We'll take one more and then we'll move on to 2B on our agenda. Anyone else have a question for David? Okay, seeing and hearing none. David, you're welcome to stay, of course, or you can go and enjoy your evening. But again, on behalf of everyone, thank you very much for your time, your expertise, your thoughtfulness with regard to this presentation, and we look forward to keeping in touch.
Are you going to let me
again,
get away without talking about the library?
Yeah, no.
I
David's not going to get away without talking about the library.
All right,
I'm sorry,
I'm out of here. Bye.
Go, okay,
He's an integral.
I wasn't sure. Well, wait, I wasn't sure if that topic was yours, Nkosi, or David's.
No,
so if it's David's, play.
It's David's topic. Yeah, to be clear.
David,
and I
what's
put it
up
on
with the
agenda.
library?
Yeah, put it on the agenda specifically to have to draw his attention to it, and also to draw the committee's attention, because for everyone's sort of background and sort of context here, the original preliminary plan that did the Shady Grove Station overall development, west side and east side, had as part of its condition of approval a library back in 2012 that was a notion that within one of the last multifamily building, that there would be sort of space reserved for Montgomery County Public Libraries to actually have a sort of small facility, about 6,200 square feet. And that's sort of documented in the prior board approval. So we're getting to that stage where the next and final multifamily building will be coming back into our department sometime this year, maybe early next year. So we really need to begin thinking about if that library will occur in the near term, or will it just sort of go out the door. So that's sort of a quick overview and background on the library. So with DGS is been the lead regarding the redevelopment of the county service park. I was previously called, and obviously there's still the representative of the county regarding negotiations with EYA and other property owners who are still redeveloping the site. So, so any information, David, that you could provide regarding DGS's thinking today on the library in terms of that prior approval, if you still think that's something that's feasible, or if you're going to move away from it, or something that you still want to explore regarding the future as the community continues to build out.
All right. So thanks for that introduction, Nkosi. I do, and I've spoken with the Department of Libraries about this because I understood from Jeff that this was an interest in the community. So let me give you a little bit more history or some up-to-date info on where we're at. Nkosi's right. It was included in the original master plan. Building D, as we call it, the last build, the last multi-family building to be built. EYA has already notified us that they intend to make a proposal for that purpose. And so that should be getting underway fairly quickly. The building is planned to have ground floor retail, and part of that includes an option for the county to acquire a little under 7,000, 6,200, I think, Nkosi, is that what you said? I've just always remembered it as 7,000, but square feet of space. But it's an option. It's not a requirement. We're not under an obligation to do so. There's an opportunity to do so as the project progresses. If we do not elect to take this space from EYA, they can proceed with a private tenant instead. So there'll still be some commercial use in that space. So knowing that, I went to the Department of Libraries and I asked its director and its staff specifically about a library at Shady Grove. And I was told that in their April 2023 facility master plan, it did not include a library at Shady Grove. And the reasons that the Department of Libraries gave is that the Rockville Library is 2 miles away, the Twinbrook Library is 4 miles away, and the Gaithersburg Library is 5 miles away. And the Department of Libraries did not believe that it made economic sense to build, outfit, and staff a library at Shady Grove West. And that is a quote unquote from the Department of Libraries. So I realize that that's probably a disappointment to some of you, but at this point, the county is not intending to place a library in Building D.
So I have a question, David. Why was a library proposed and or suggested in the original Montgomery plans, Shady Grove sector plan? Who can answer that question?
That I cannot answer. I do not know why it was. I remember seeing the original plans and sketches. Building D was going to be at the end of that little roundabout area with the library right at the facing folks as they come into that area. I remember seeing the sketches and hearing the discussions. All I can tell you is that the Department of Libraries doesn't think that that's a good investment. That's all I can tell you. I don't know how that got there and at what conversations. I know that, not to beat up on the current Department of Libraries, I'm told that Department of Libraries going back some time has not included this in its master plan. But so just understand, while I'm the developer of the site working with EYA, I'm not the guy who determines where what goes where. So I would probably not be the person to answer questions on the whys and wherefores. But I see Aaron had his hand up, so maybe Aaron can address this.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think the bottom line is, and David, tell me if I'm right or wrong. Community amenities, community facilities detailed in master plans. Some don't get built, some do get built. As we know here, some take forever to move forward. And that's really ultimately a decision of the county executive and the council in budgets, right? So I think the question that would help us sort of think about our approach would be, is there a shot clock in terms of for how long does the county have the option to take that space? From when does it start? How long is it? What actual trigger does the county need to achieve then to have that space preserved? Because that will help inform us in terms of whether we want to go forward as a community to push for that library and make the argument, just like for any other capital project.
You know, that's an excellent observation, Aaron, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Under the development plan, the county always has an option on this piece of real estate, this 7,000 square feet. EYA, if the county does not initially exercise that option, then EYA can lease it out to someone else. And then when that lease expires, the county can come in and exercise its option at that time. So let's say EYA leases it out to some outlet for a 5-year period. At the expiration of that lease, we get notified, and the county could then exercise its option to put or 10 years from now. And I suggest that as the east side develops and more residences move in and occupancy increases, there could be a more increased emphasis for having a library. But again, I don't want to speak on the factors that go into libraries master planning, but we would always have an option once any lease in that site expires.
You know, David, you're the messenger here. Respectfully to the director of libraries, I don't care what they think. Okay, what I care about are living in a walkable community that has been defined, described by the vision of Montgomery Planning, supported for years by the council. And while I appreciate your good faith effort, that of your team, and everybody else on this call who's in public service, okay, I'm going to say it. This is grounds for a class action lawsuit. I'm not an attorney. I know jack about that kind of stuff. But these, to have a plan, to have people move into a community with that plan in mind, with those hopes, those promises of the county, all of this defined, and then for the county to skirt its responsibility bit by bit, and here's another one, okay, is really unfair. Now, you're the messenger. I get it, all right? And all I can say is whether it's a library or whether it's a bus depot, they're false promises. And it's extremely disappointing, beyond extremely disappointing. It's unfair, it's unjust, and it equates to another example of development disparity, inequity in this county. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Earlier in your comments, you mentioned 2 places that are unfamiliar to me. I've never been there, Bethesda and Silver Spring. I'm not familiar with those places. Sorry, but I'm making a joke. It is evident, painfully evident, there's development disparity in this county. So to take the library as an example, I don't accept what the director of libraries says. Give him or her my number. Be happy to chat. All right, because this county prides itself on walkable communities, safe, walkable communities, amenities within 15 minutes, within 10 minutes, okay? Yeah, the Rockville Library is a drive away. Can't walk there. So, this is yet, lies and false promises, yet another example, despite what we appreciate to be your good faith effort to figure out the bus depot. Okay, so Carol, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I've muted my mic. I was just going to throw up an idea. I mean, it's 7,000 square feet. It was thought of as supporting a library. we don't want to see EYA monetize this space that was supposed to be a community amenity. Shabana, is there any other, amenities that the West Side thinks that they might want or desire that you could use the 7,000 square feet for?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I wish I had a quick answer.
Can we? Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
not expecting you to have a quick answer.
Yeah.
But you can start asking around. I mean,
Yeah.
this this is supposed to be, this space is supposed to be a community amenity.
Yeah.
They thought, quote unquote, maybe a library if the library is not feasible. What else do you need?
Well, the fact of the matter is we can't even get retail here because we only have half of the side of the street developed. Nobody wants to rent these places. So EYA can have as much retail down on the bottom level of these multifamily buildings as they want, but they can't find anybody to rent them. In the newest building, I don't know how much retail they actually have. We have the CVS, and as far as I know, that's all we've got going in there for sure. Across the street, at the bottom of the Daily, there's open spaces there. So, I mean, as far as, retail, we can't get restaurants, we can't get an ice cream shop. Now we can't get a library. I mean, maybe a community meeting place. I don't know, something that would give us some value of this property, something. I mean, the library was a great space because it was great for the kids because there's no park here, right? So having a library was a good place where families could take their kids. You could have little reading performances. I mean, lots of different good things could happen there, where it could be a family-oriented space, not just a library where you go and pick up books. You could have poetry there, you could have writing classes there. So many different things could happen in that space. So, I mean, maybe we should think outside of the box with the Department of Libraries too. I mean, it is a plan. Our master plan is really giving us nothing, and it's actually quite discouraging and very saddening to me tonight to hear that.
Yeah. Shobhan, pardon me for interrupting. I completely agree with you. Absolutely nothing. And it's disappointing beyond real definition, actually. And I'm a public servant myself. I appreciate what people do in public service, but we have a problem here. We have a big problem, and everyone is aware of it. And all I can say to all of you who've kindly joined, speak up, be heard, and vote in the next election. That's among other things I have to say. Nkosi, back to you. Go ahead. We got a big problem. Go ahead.
So in terms of giving a little bit more context, in terms of background, and Jeff, I'm answering your question from earlier in terms of how the recommendation came into be. So the 2006 plan had called for a library within the Shady Grove area. And when that preliminary plan for the west side, east side came about, initially the notion was to have something at the intersection, near to the intersection of Shady Grove and Crabs Branch. And obviously discussions continued, but and that didn't occur because similar notions that you have libraries, bigger libraries, and libraries at that time was still evolving regarding the sort of models of libraries that were coming on, that libraries were thinking about in terms of smaller, not as big as Silver Spring, and obviously Rockville, which was built not too long prior to 2006. So we settled on the notion of within the core of the high intensity portion of the community would have this public facility. So we have documentation from libraries regarding the appropriateness of this and all of that. So I would definitely urge David and his colleagues at General Services to not walk away from the importance of this facility. It may be interpreted, as Shabana was noted, saying earlier that it could have a different sort of iteration as we think about how a community space could be. Maybe not a traditional library, maybe a sort of a third space that has features of a library with other elements that could be publicly owned, managed, or operated with other public-private partnerships or some thereof. But it's critical that those of us in the public sector push to have this facility be retained as part of the overall Shady Grove community. I think the master plan talks about it from 2006. The master plan from 2021 that the council approved a couple of years back has references regarding the library in terms of the lease agreement, etc., with DGS. So it's important that we sort of work towards not jettison this idea, but sort of work towards its implementation. So that's sort of my take on that.
Yeah, that's fine, Nkosi. I appreciate that. This is again an issue that I believe is needs to be brought up with the Department of Libraries. This group has been very accomplished at making its thoughts and desires and intentions known, and I would encourage you to do that in that regard. I'm sure all I can tell you is what was relayed to me, and if you want to express your thoughts, I think perhaps having a discussion with the director of the Department of Libraries is in order to find out what rationale goes into their thinking regarding the locations of libraries. I am, I appreciate try to advocate for you guys as much as I can, but in this case, you might have gone to the well one too many times. I just don't have the background on what libraries employs in its thinking and development of its master plan.
Thank you, David. If anyone would want to invite the director of libraries to one of our meetings, happy to oblige. However, I will just say, having been in this ecosystem for a while now as a volunteer and as a community member for over 17 years, the persistent disconnects among the various county entities not talking to each other or not communicating with each other makes me personally, I'm speaking for myself, reluctant to go to yet another county office, county division, and hear from them when they are going to reference other parts of the county or other offices that are not part of that conversation. I'm getting exhausted, okay? And I got it, I could do this all day, to quote the movie, all right? But it becomes exhausting at some point. It becomes exhausting with an expectation that the obvious development of inequity shouldn't be happening in this county. So, maybe we'll invite them, maybe we won't. I don't know. Because we're going to hear, sounds like they've made up their mind.
Well,
if we need to do a petition, we will do a petition. Yeah. Okay. Just like we have a petition to move the bus depot with over 800 signatures. So, David, much appreciated. But from a citizen point of view, from a voter's point of view, it's exhausting to go from one county office to another.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, and I don't mean to sound like the bureaucrat saying, "Well,
no, you're not.
I'll send you to someone else." I hate that stuff myself.
That's not. No, you're not. You're not.
I like us to be solution providers, but let me. I will say this. I will extend what is a very clear response from this group to the director of libraries tonight, and urge her to look at this.
So, David, what I would ask you is thank you. First of all, thank you very much. What I would say more specifically is the director of the library should be looking at the very plan in which a library is mentioned and speak to that plan. What should happen is a conversation between the director of libraries and, quite frankly, Montgomery Planning. It's Montgomery Planning's plan. It's not our plan. This plan is not the community's plan. It is the county's plan. It belongs to the county executive, it belongs to the council, and it belongs to everyone else in the county who's publicly responsible for implementing it. It's not my plan. It's not West Side's plan. It's the county's plan. So maybe there ought to be a meeting between libraries and Montgomery Planning with Councilmember Lutke and perhaps also our at-large members in the room. That's what should happen.
Understood.
That's my 2 cents. Okay. So you all get together and have that conversation and let us know. Okay. Please. Ted, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I read something in the comments, but I would love to have myself corrected if I'm wrong on this. I mean, I've lived within the grounds of the sector plan since 2001. I remember the original charrettes and eventually in that process realizing that it was really a desire to take both sides of Crab Branch and build a huge amount of housing in which the county had land and WMATA had land that they were looking to get value in and to build. And I understand, even if I don't agree, the motivations that existed in there. I'm interested in knowing what am I missing that are resources, amenities that have been put in that it currently exists today since that happened. We've had housing built, we've had other things, but what exists what things that were listed as part of the master plan that were going to be amenities exist at this point?
That's a good question. The master plan was required a public, as all master plans do, require a public amenity. The public amenity on the west side was intended to be the library. And on the east side, there'd be schools and open space. And that's still planned for the east side, and that's in our planning for that site is an elementary school and green space associated with the school and the community. So I mean, I hear you.
And to sort of continue this point here, David, and I really, as other people have said, I really do appreciate it. And I'm just asking you for information here. I'm not complaining to you as an individual around this. Since the master plan has been completed, I know, how many dwelling units have been put in place that currently exist that didn't exist when the master plan was passed in the area. Do you have a sense of that? I don't. I
don't have.
Yeah, you have about 1,500 plus or minus units, and about 30,000, maybe less than 30,000 square foot of retail, if you include both buildings at Gramercy and Crabs Ranch.
And if I remember right, and I could be wrong, the plan ultimately called for about 6,000 dwelling units, and so we're a quarter of the way through our list of dwelling units, and the amenities are not in place. And I will also sort of throw into here about this, and this is not meant to be a person who's been around for a while versus new arrivals to the area existing in that new housing standpoint of piece here. But I remember the time where this plan was actually finally really put through in this, to thinking that those amenities really might service the people who are new there, but it's not really going to take care of the greater area of people who had already existed. What I'm even seeing now is that we don't still even have amenities that address and meet the needs of the people who are new. And so so I'm just basically, as I say, trying to gather some information here to sort of.
Yeah, I will say in response to that, I'll just say that
I understand.
I think everyone anticipated the development of both the east and the west side to occur far more rapidly than it has, and so there's certainly some delays and disappointments associated with that. But we'll we'll take this up with the Department of Libraries and see what discussions. And I saw the comments about advocating the county meeting with planning. Not sure exactly where that will go and how that'll be structured, but we'll reach out.
Thank you.
I will clearly communicate what are obviously the upset sentiments of this committee and its participants. So I appreciate that. We'll follow up. Thanks. And we'll have a briefing with the council member too.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Shimano, that's how I characterize the emotions. Yes.
Okay.
So I've got some takeaways. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And we ourselves will take away further advocacy and take up a holiday timed invitation to MCPS regarding their being a stakeholder in this multifaceted county plan. All right. So on to number 3, development updates. Nikosi, anything else to share about the plan?
This library issue is going to continue to raise its head based on the last amendment that's going to be coming in to the department either before the end of the year or early next year. So that's going to have a life of its own. So hasn't been yet formally submitted, but it's coming. The other thing that I'm aware of, there's another annexation that's out there. This is for a vacant property at the intersection of 55 and Shady Grove Road. It's sort of in the sort of southwestern quadrant of the intersection. If you're heading northwestern quadrant of the intersection, I should say, if you're heading northbound. It's adjacent to the KC Community Center area. You have some multifamily developments there near in the city of Gaithersburg. It would be an annexation from the county into Gaithersburg. Has not yet. We've had one meeting on it. It's within the maximum expansion limits of the city of Gaithersburg. And there's a notion of the KC Trust as the owner working with the city to do upgrades to the existing multifamily that's there along 55 and sort of making a bigger holistic community out of it. So that's what I know that's out there in terms of annexation. The council recently approved the annexation of Walnut Hill Shopping Center. This went also to the city of Gaithersburg. We don't have any other applications that have been in. I think in the past couple of months, we talked about a couple prospective developments along Shady Grove Road. Not Shady Grove Road, I'm sorry. Crabs Branch Way, closer to Goody in terms of some office buildings that will be potentially redeveloped. We have not yet had any other future meetings with those prospective redevelopment sites. So that's all I have in terms of anything that's sort of happening on the pending on the background.
Thanks, Nikosi. What is the status of there's supposed to be a grocery store put in where I think the King Buick site was on Shady Grove Road. There's a several story building as you're traveling north on Shady Grove on Rockville Pike, on Rockville Pike. As you cross over Redland Road, that vacated site, it was where the CarMax was.
Right,
and that's been vacant for years.
Yeah, that's at King Farm Boulevard in 55. Right across the street, before you enter the metro station. That's within the city of Rockville. They were supposed to have a multifamily component and a retail component. Initially, they started with just a retail grocery store. I believe at one time is going to be, I think, Aldi. Is the last thing I think I can recall on that. I mean, we commented on it prior to it getting site plan approval, which was, I believe, pre-pandemic in 2019. So it's been a number of years. So I haven't had any new information on it since it's within the city, and it's one of those projects that when we meet with them quarterly, we haven't discussed lately. But we're gonna meet in November, either November or December. So I'll probably make a note of that in terms of asking about it.
Yeah, I would appreciate on behalf of the committee if you would make a note of it and let us know at our December meeting on December 6th what the city of Rockville says about that property, please. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Jeff,
Shobana,
I was just going to note that I find that piece of property confusing because it still has a for sale sign posted on it. So I don't know if that development is dead in the water or not.
Yeah, no, I'll reach out to Rockville City staff and tomorrow and see if I could get any information on that, because I know it's been approved by them.
I'm gonna actually recommend something publicly here. I'm gonna recommend, and then Kosi, I'd like you to ask Rockville City to name a representative who can attend our meetings on a regular basis moving forward. It seems to me that our community, since we are wedged between Gaithersburg and Rockville, and questions that we have about development per the sector plan or related to the sector plan, respectfully can't be answered by Montgomery Planning because it's City of Rockville or City of Gaithersburg. A representative from those municipalities ought to be on this committee. Starting with Rockville.
Yeah,
starting with Rockville.
Yeah, both municipalities.
Okay, so we've got a representative. So we have a representative from the city, Manisha.
Manisha, correct.
Yeah,
is on this call.
Yes.
Very good.
Hi.
Correct.
Yeah, I do
Hi,
attend
Manisha.
your meetings quite regularly.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Great.
can
So
check on the number of units, but it is definitely a lighter. And they have received approvals and they're pretty much ready, shovel ready. They're interested in starting the construction.
So when you say starting the construction, can you give us a timeline for that?
I will have to look into that. I will certainly look into that and email you that information.
That'd be great. Thank you for attending this meeting and as you can, meetings going forward to help keep our community informed. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Manisha.
Sure. Thank you. And Manisha, forgive me, I didn't know you were on the call. So thank you very much for making yourself known. Appreciate it. Shobana, go ahead.
Thanks, Jeff. Just a quick question, Nkosi, the infamous parcel of land, Shady Grove and Crabs Branch. Any updates on that?
Nothing on that. No, I can't tell you anything that's happening behind the scenes on it. Just being quiet on it. So and today we met with EYA and others. But no, I don't have any information on that to share.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Nkosi, very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we are at 10 to 9. We've gone over, but it's been a good, productive meeting. Any other topics that anyone wishes to raise related to what we've discussed or moving forward? Ted, please go ahead.
Yeah, just one very quick question. I received notice through my development that there's plans to do construction on Redland Road at some point in the next 6 months or a year to replace a bridge over Mill Creek. And my understanding is that they're going to have to close the road during that time. Does anyone have some sense about how long Redland Road will have to be closed for that construction? Whether it's days, a couple of weeks, 1 day, a couple hours. I'm just.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I did not bring that up in my updates, so appreciate it. So yes, that project, that's a public Montgomery County Department of Transportation project that's going to public review or mandatory review. I believe it is next Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And And I think within that memo that will be posted by my colleague, Stephen Aldridge, by Friday, we'll have more details regarding the anticipated timeline in terms of how long that portion of Redland Road will be closed. But I would anticipate there will be several, probably, I read through his memo earlier this week, and I think he had in there at least a couple months in terms of the notion to build during summer, so that will be at least more than a month of construction. So, but once his memo is final, I'll be out of the area on Friday, but MontgomeryPlanning.org will have his memo posted. And you could see it there. So,
okay. And I just want to make sure I heard you properly, but I don't want to. And I clearly I hear your tentativeness about you're not totally sure about something and it'll be known in a few days.
Correct.
Did it sound like you were saying that it might be that the road would be closed for up to a month?
It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while to rebuild the bridge. So, yeah, I don't want to give you a wrong time on that. So I would say it's going to take some time regarding for DOT and the contractors and builders to do the bridge. So, but I think in this memorandum you'll find at least a notion right now in terms of the timing of it. So,
Nicosa, can you talk about the how they're gonna have any detours?
Yeah, there was a detour map that's associated with it. Again, that's part of Steve's review, and that'll be included in his review as well, his memo as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Nicosa, if you'd be kind enough to share that memo widely, assuming it's a public document, because with respect to Ted's question, I heard many others have the same question, and I got the postcard about it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there was a public meeting, a virtual public meeting the MCDOT held, I believe, several months back on this. That's one. That's MCDOT as the mandatory referral applicant. And then there is the noticing that we do as part of the mandatory referral regarding what's coming before the board. So I think all civic associations, etc., were notified regarding the mandatory referral before the board.
And I'm assuming that, you know, MCPS is in the loop on this too, because that's a main route to you know, Redland Middle School and Magruder High School. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but
right? I can't talk to it but MCPS, but just for the people on this call, the area is between Overhill and Briardale. That's sort of the bridge that goes within that vicinity. If you're on Redland Road, that's the sort of the area between that we're talking about. So
right. Okay. All right. Thank you. It's very helpful. Okay. Thanks very much, Aaron. Thank you. I saw a question from Elizabeth Ron Kamara. Any thoughts by the West Side neighbors on having tennis basketball courts on any remaining open space? To which Shobana answered, there's no remaining open space. Oh, you said we can discuss it at our HO meeting. I'm sorry, I missed that part. Thanks, Shobana. I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, that's okay. We would love to have open space, but I don't think we have any.
Okay, thank you. And Manisha offers some very helpful information about the grocery store that we were discussing a little bit ago. Thank you, Manisha, very much. Appreciate it. And again, I was not aware that you were on the call, so I appreciate it. Okay, anything else? Any questions or any other topics that anybody wishes to bring up? You're welcome, Joe. Thank you. Okay, thanks again, David Dice, for your time this evening, for everything that you're doing, your advocacy, for being a messenger.
More work to do.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.
And Nicosi, thanks again to you. Aaron, thanks for all that you're doing. And everyone, thank you for your time this evening and being involved. and speaking up for the Shady Grove sector plan and its implementation and getting everybody together to move it forward as best as circumstances allow. Thank you all very much. See you in December.
Thank you, Jeff.
Very well.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody. Bye.